Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Base, staring at the massive screen that showed Earth floating in the darkness of space. 3 days ago, everything had changed for humanity. 3 days ago, they learned they were not alone in the universe. The first alien ship had appeared without warning near Jupiter. It was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. The ship sent a message in perfect English, which scared everyone more than the ship itself. How did they know human language? "People of Earth," the message had said. "We are the Zephyrian Collective. We have watched your species for some time. You have reached a level of technology that requires our attention." Sarah remembered how excited everyone had been at first. First contact with aliens. Scientists celebrated, politicians prepared speeches, and children around the world looked up at the stars with wonder. But the excitement died quickly when the aliens explained why they had come. "Your species must now choose," the message continued. "Join the collective as a tributary world or face the consequences. You will provide 60% of your resources to us. You will follow our laws. You will serve our empire. This is not a request. This is how things work in this galaxy." The alien ship waited for 3 days. During those 3 days, Earth's leaders argued and fought. Some wanted to accept the deal. They said humans were not ready to fight aliens with better technology. Others said they should negotiate for better terms. But Admiral Sarah Chen had a different idea. She had spent her life in the military, first in the old Earth navies, then in the new Space Force. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and rebels on Mars. She knew one thing about bullies: they only understood strength. "We need to send them a message," Sarah told the World Council. "Not with words, but with actions." The President of the Americas shook his head. "Admiral, they have technology we can barely understand. Their ship alone is 10 times bigger than our largest space station. Size isn't everything," Sarah replied. "I've seen big ships sink before." The Chinese premier leaned forward. "What do you suggest, Admiral?" Sarah looked around the room at the most powerful people on Earth. "We tell them no. We tell them Earth is not for sale." The room erupted in arguments. The European Chancellor stood up. "That's suicide. They could destroy our planet." "Maybe," Sarah said quietly. "But what's the point of staying alive if we're slaves?" For hours they debated. Some leaders called Sarah crazy. Others said she was brave. In the end, they took a vote. It was close, but Sarah's side won by 3 votes. The alien ship, which called itself the Judgment of Stars, sat waiting near Jupiter. Its captain was Commander HFY, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms. He had conquered 12 worlds for the collective. Humans would be the 13th. HFY expected the humans to surrender quickly. All primitive species did. They would cry and beg, then agree to serve the collective. It was always the same. His communication officer, a younger Zephyrian named Kextai, turned to him. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld." "Good," HFY said. "Play their surrender message." The screen showed a human female in a dark blue uniform. She had short gray hair and cold eyes. She spoke clearly and slowly. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We have received your offer to join your collective." She paused. "We decline." HFY's 4 eyes widened. No species had ever said no before. The human continued. "Earth is not for sale. We will not give you our resources. We will not follow your laws. We will not serve your empire." Another pause. "If you want our world, you'll have to take it." The message ended. The bridge of the Judgment of Stars was silent. Kextai spoke first. "Commander, did she just refuse?" HFY stood up slowly. In 300 years of life, he had never heard such words from a primitive species. "They don't understand," he said. "They think they can fight us." "Should we destroy them now?" asked the weapons officer. "No," HFY said after thinking for a moment. "They need a demonstration. Send word to the collective. Request a demonstration fleet. 12 ships should be enough to show them our power." Back on Luna Base, Sarah watched the alien ship through telescopes. It had not moved since receiving her message. She knew they were probably calling for backup. "Admiral," said her aide, Lieutenant Kim Park. "The World Council is asking if you really meant what you said." "Every word," Sarah replied. "Have all military units report their status. I want to know every ship, every weapon, every soldier we have." "Yes, ma'am." "Admiral, can I ask you something?" Sarah nodded. "Do you really think we can win?" Sarah looked at the young officer. Kim was barely 25, fresh from the academy. She had never seen real war. Lieutenant, I've learned something in my 40 years of service. It's not about winning or losing. It's about making the other guy pay such a high price that he wishes he'd never started the fight. Over the next week, 12 more alien ships arrived near Jupiter. They were smaller than the first ship, but still massive by human standards. The fleet formed up and began moving toward Earth. Sarah gathered her officers in the war room. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to make history. In a few days, those ships will reach Earth. They expect us to surrender when we see their fleet. Will we? Asked General Martinez, head of ground forces. Hell no, Sarah said. We're going to give them a warm welcome they'll never forget. The plan Sarah had worked out was simple but dangerous. The aliens expected humans to fight like other spacefaring species. Ship-to-ship battles in open space, formal rules of war, surrender when outgunned. But humans had learned warfare in a different school. Every dirty trick we know, Sarah told her staff. Every unconventional tactic. Everything that would make a civilized species ashamed. She smiled grimly. Lucky for us, we've never been that civilized. The alien fleet moved closer. On Earth, people watched the skies and prayed. Some fled to bunkers. Others stood on rooftops wanting to see humanity's first space battle. In the command center, Sarah checked her watch. Transmission to the fleet, she ordered. The communication officer nodded. You're on, Admiral. Sarah looked directly into the camera. She knew the aliens would intercept this message. She wanted them to. This is Admiral Sarah Chen to all human forces. In 1 hour, we make our stand. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every free person who will ever live. We're fighting to show the galaxy that Earth bows to no one. She paused. Make them pay for every meter of space. Make them remember the day they decided to threaten humanity. The transmission ended. Sarah turned to her staff. Signal all units. Execute Operation Hornet's Nest. Above Earth's atmosphere, the alien fleet prepared for an easy victory. They had faced primitive weapons before, simple missiles, basic energy beams, weak shields. They expected the humans to line up their ships and fight honorably. They were about to learn that humans had very different ideas about honor. Commander Zethai stood on his bridge, watching the small human fleet approach. Only 30 ships against his 12. It would be a massacre. Interesting, he said to his officers. They're actually going to fight. How primitive. He had no idea that he was flying into the most dangerous trap in human military history. Commander Zethai watched the human ships approach his fleet. The tiny vessels looked like toys compared to his mighty warships. Each of his ships was a kilometer long, armed with plasma cannons that could melt asteroids. The human ships were barely 200 meters long. This will be over quickly, he told his bridge crew. Prepare to fire warning shots. Once they see our power, they'll surrender. But something felt wrong. The human ships weren't moving like other primitive species. Most young civilizations lined up their fleets in neat formations, trying to copy the tactics they'd seen in their entertainment. These humans moved in strange patterns, spreading out wide, using odd angles. Commander, said his sensor officer, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the human ships. What kind of readings? They appear to be carrying large amounts of nuclear material, sir. Much more than their reactors would need, Zethai frowned. Nuclear weapons were crude but dangerous in large numbers. Still, his shields could handle anything these primitives could throw at him. On the bridge of the human flagship, the UES Defiance, Admiral Sarah Chen watched the alien fleet through her tactical display. The ships were beautiful in a terrifying way, all smooth curves and glowing energy fields. But beauty didn't win wars. All ships, this is Control, she said into her communicator. You know the plan. Stay spread out. Don't bunch up. Make them work for every shot. Admiral, said her weapons officer. The mining charges are ready. Sarah nodded. The mining charges had been her idea. For 50 years, humans had used nuclear explosives to break apart asteroids for mining. The charges weren't designed as weapons, but Sarah had learned that in war, everything could be a weapon. Signal the belt miners, she ordered. Tell them it's time. Out in the asteroid belt, hundreds of mining ships had been waiting. They weren't warships, just tough industrial vessels built to haul rocks. But each one carried dozens of nuclear mining charges, and they'd been moving toward the alien fleet for the past week, hidden among the asteroids. Zethai was still admiring his fleet's formation when the first mining ship exploded next to his port escort. The explosion wasn't like a proper plasma weapon. It was crude, violent, and far more powerful than it should have been. What was that? He shouted. Before anyone could answer, more explosions lit up space around his fleet. The mining ships had been disguised as asteroids, their hulls covered with rock and ice. Now they were ramming his vessels and detonating their nuclear charges at point-blank range. Shields, Zethai ordered, but it was too late. 3 of his ships were already burning, their elegant hulls cracked open by the crude nuclear blasts. "Sir, we're being attacked by mining vessels," his tactical officer reported. "They're using suicide tactics." Zethai had never seen anything like it. What kind of species turned their industrial ships into bombs? What kind of warriors threw away their lives so easily? But the mining ships were just the beginning. While his fleet was dealing with the suicide attacks, the human warships closed in, and they weren't fighting like any civilized species. The human ships didn't line up for honorable combat. They attacked from all directions at once, firing missiles and kinetic rounds while spinning and rolling to avoid return fire. Some of them flew so close to his ships that their weapons almost touched the hulls before firing. "They're fighting like animals," shouted his weapons officer. "No formation, no honor." Admiral Sarah Chen heard similar complaints from her own officers. "Admiral, the aliens are trying to hail us," reported her communications officer. "They want to discuss terms of surrender." "Whose surrender?" Sarah asked. "Ours, ma'am. They seem to think we should stop fighting now that we've seen their ships." Sarah laughed grimly. "Tell them we're just getting started. All ships execute Phase 2. Phase 2 was even more unconventional. The human ships had been carrying more than just weapons. Hidden in their cargo bays were thousands of small drones, each one carrying a nuclear warhead barely bigger than a baseball. The drones swarmed out of the human ships like angry bees. They were too small and too many for the alien weapons to track effectively. Most got through the defensive fire and attached themselves to the alien hulls. "Get them off," Zethai screamed as he watched hundreds of tiny explosions bloom across his flagship's armor. The individual blasts were small, but there were so many of them. It was like being attacked by a cloud of radioactive insects. His beautiful ship, the pride of the collective fleet, was being eaten alive by tiny bombs. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 11 of the 12 alien ships were destroyed or crippled. Only Zethai's flagship survived, and it was barely holding together. But the victory had cost humanity dearly. 28 of their 30 ships were gone, along with all the mining vessels. Nearly 40,000 people had died. Yet somehow the humans acted like they had won. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the wreckage of her bridge, her uniform torn and bloody. Half her crew was dead, but she was still giving orders. "Get me a communication link to the surviving alien ship," she ordered. The link crackled to life. Commander Zethai's face appeared on the screen. He looked shocked and horrified. "This is Admiral Chen of Earth Defense Force," Sarah said calmly. "I believe you wanted to discuss surrender terms." Zethai stared at her. You destroyed my entire fleet with mining equipment and suicide attacks. This is not how civilized species wage war." "You're right," Sarah agreed. "We're not civilized. We're human. Now you have 2 choices. You can leave our solar system right now, or you can stay and see what other uncivilized things we can do." Zethai looked around his broken bridge. His ship was dying, his fleet was destroyed, and this human female was still threatening him. "This isn't over," he said. "The collective will send a real fleet. Hundreds of ships. You cannot fight the entire galaxy." "Maybe not," Sarah said, "but we'll give it one hell of a try." After the alien ship limped away, Sarah called Earth. The celebration was already starting. People danced in the streets thinking the war was over, but Sarah knew better. She had military intelligence reports about the collective. They ruled hundreds of worlds and had thousands of ships. This had been just a scouting force. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Kim Park, who had somehow survived the battle. "What do we do now?" Sarah looked out at the debris field where 2 fleets had died. "Now we get ready for the real war, and we'd better figure out how to fight even dirtier than we did today." On his dying ship, Commander Zethai sent a message to the collective high command. His report was brief but terrifying. "The humans are not like other species," he transmitted. "They do not fight with honor. They use weapons we do not understand. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. They turned their entire moon into a weapons platform during the battle. They are dangerous beyond measure." The message traveled across the galaxy to the collective capital. When the High Command read it, they thought Zethai had gone insane from battle shock. How could primitive humans be dangerous to the mighty collective? They decided to send a proper invasion force. 300 ships and 2 million soldiers. Surely that would be enough to crush one small world? They had no idea that Admiral Sarah Chen was already preparing for their arrival, and her preparations would have horrified any civilized species in the galaxy. The war for Earth's freedom was just beginning, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what total war really meant. 6 months after the first battle, the real invasion fleet arrived. Admiral Sarah Chen watched from her command, bunkered deep beneath the Swiss Alps as 300 alien ships surrounded Earth. The fleet was so large it blocked out stars. "They're not taking any chances this time," said General Martinez, studying the tactical display. Each alien ship was massive, bristling with weapons that could turn continents to glass. Sarah nodded grimly. After the first battle, she had known this day would come. The past 6 months had been the busiest in human history. Every factory on Earth had been converted to make weapons. Every person had been trained to fight. The planet itself had become a fortress. High Admiral Vexthai commanded the invasion fleet from his flagship, the Inevitable Victory. Unlike his dead predecessor, Vexthai was taking no chances with these crazy humans. His ships formed a perfect sphere around Earth, blocking every possible escape route. "Begin the blockade," he ordered. "Nothing gets in or out. No ships, no supplies, no communications. Let them starve for a few months. Then they'll beg to surrender." It was a sound strategy. The collective had used it on dozens of worlds. Cut off supplies, and even the most stubborn species would surrender rather than watch their children starve. But Vexthai didn't understand humans. On Earth, President Martinez addressed the world from an underground bunker in Mexico City. The surface cities had been mostly evacuated. Millions of people now lived in vast underground complexes that had been built in just 6 months. "My fellow humans," the president said, "the aliens think they can starve us into surrender. They don't know us very well." He was right. The past 6 months had seen changes that would have seemed impossible before the war. Farmland had been moved underground using artificial lighting. Ocean farms had expanded to cover millions of acres. Every rooftop was now a garden. Every basement was a workshop. But most importantly, every human was now a soldier. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kim Park reported to Sarah, "the rationing system is working perfectly. We can maintain current food levels for 3 years if necessary." Sarah smiled. The aliens probably expected humans to riot when food became scarce. Instead, people had simply eaten less and worked harder. Children learned math by calculating ammunition production. Teenagers studied chemistry by making explosives. Grandparents grew vegetables in basement hydroponic farms. The entire planet had become a military base. Admiral Vexthai watched Earth through his ship's sensors. After 2 months of blockade, he expected to see signs of collapse. Instead, he saw something that confused him. "These readings can't be right," he told his science officer. "The planet's industrial output has increased since we began the blockade." "I've checked 3 times, sir. Human manufacturing has gone up by 400%. They're building more weapons now than when we arrived." Vexthai didn't understand. How could a planet under siege become more productive? On collective worlds, blockades always caused economic collapse. He also didn't understand the strange structures humans were building on their planet's surface. The readings showed massive construction projects, but they didn't look like normal buildings. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the human homeworld. They appear to be installing some kind of planetary defense system." "Impossible," Vexthai said. "Their technology is centuries behind ours." But the energy readings kept growing stronger. Whatever the humans were building, it was big. Deep beneath Mount Everest, teams of human engineers worked around the clock on Project Sledgehammer. They had taken the mountain's natural structure and turned it into the largest weapon ever built. "The magnetic accelerator is online," reported Dr. Elizabeth Wright, the project's chief scientist. "We can launch a 50-ton projectile at 10% of light speed." Sarah studied the massive weapon through reinforced windows. It was basically a railgun the size of a mountain, capable of hurling chunks of metal fast enough to punch through any armor. "How many shots do we get?" she asked. 12 if we don't want to melt the mountain. "But Admiral, each shot has the power of a hydrogen bomb." Similar weapons were being built inside other mountains around the world. The Himalayas, the Rockies, the Andes, all were being hollowed out and turned into gun barrels. But mountains weren't the only things being weaponized. Human creativity had run wild during the blockade. Sports stadiums became missile launch sites. Shopping malls became ammunition factories. Even graveyards were being used. The humans had figured out how to hide weapons beneath tombstones. Admiral Vexithai finally decided he had waited long enough. "Begin orbital bombardment," he ordered. "Target their major cities first. When they see their homes burning, they'll surrender." The alien fleet opened fire from high orbit, sending streams of plasma down toward Earth's surface. The beams were powerful enough to melt steel and boil stone, but something went wrong. Instead of striking cities, most of the plasma beams hit empty ground or were deflected by some kind of energy field. "Report," Vexithai demanded. "Sir, the humans have hidden their cities. The structures we were targeting appear to be decoys, and they've deployed some kind of magnetic shielding system around their population centers." Vexithai stared at the tactical display. The crafty humans had spent months building fake cities while moving their real ones underground, and somehow they had created shields that could deflect plasma fire. But the real shock came when Earth fired back. The first mountain gun fired from the Himalayas. A 50-ton chunk of depleted uranium shot out of Mount Everest at incredible speed. The projectile hit the alien cruiser Mercy of Stars dead center, punching through its shields like they were paper. The massive ship broke in half and exploded. "Impossible," Vexithai shouted. "How can primitive kinetics penetrate our shields?" "Sir, the projectile was moving at 10% of light speed. No ship's shields are designed for that kind of impact." More mountain guns fired. Chunks of metal flew up from Earth like angry fists, each one fast enough to destroy whatever it hit. Within an hour, the collective had lost 30 ships to weapons that shouldn't even exist, but the humans weren't done. As the alien fleet tried to reorganize, Earth's surface suddenly erupted with thousands of smaller weapons. Every building, every hill, every structure that looked innocent was actually a hidden gun or missile launcher. Sarah had learned from history. During World War II, humans had hidden weapons in schools and hospitals, turning entire cities into battlefields. Now she had done the same thing to an entire planet. "All units fire at will," she ordered from her bunker. The sky above Earth lit up with weapons fire, missiles, lasers, kinetic rounds, and things that had never been used in space combat before. Humans fired everything they had, including weapons the aliens didn't recognize. "Sir," the tactical officer reported to Vexithai, "they're using some kind of nuclear pulse weapon. It's disrupting our formation." "And sir," added the communications officer, "they're broadcasting something on all frequencies." "What are they saying?" "It appears to be music, sir. Very loud music." The humans were playing rock music at full volume while they fought. To the disciplined collective forces, it was chaos. But to the humans, it was just another Tuesday. The battle raged for 18 hours. When it was over, the collective fleet had lost nearly 100 ships. Earth was scarred and burning, but still fighting. Admiral Vexithai looked at his damage reports in disbelief. These humans had turned their entire world into a weapon. They fought from hospitals and schools. They hid guns in children's playgrounds. They showed no respect for the civilized rules of war. "Open a channel to the human leadership," he ordered. Admiral Sarah Chen's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired but defiant. "I am High Admiral Vexithai of the Collective Fleet," he said formally. "Your resistance is impressive but futile. Surrender now and we will show mercy." Sarah laughed. "Mercy? You came to our world uninvited? You tried to make us slaves. You bombed our cities." She leaned forward. "We don't want your mercy. We want you gone." "You cannot win," Vexithai insisted. "We still have 200 ships. You have no fleet left." "Ships aren't everything," Sarah said. "We've got something you don't understand." "And what is that?" Sarah smiled coldly. "We've got nothing left to lose. And humans with nothing to lose are the most dangerous thing in the universe." The transmission ended. Vexithai stared at the blank screen, finally beginning to understand what his fleet had gotten into. These humans weren't just fighting a war. They were willing to turn their entire civilization into a weapon. They would sacrifice anything, destroy anything, fight from anywhere. For the first time in his long military career, High Admiral Vexithai felt afraid. While Admiral Vexithai's fleet surrounded Earth, something else was happening in the dark spaces between stars. During the 8-month siege, the humans had not been idle. They had been learning. Captain Maria Santos floated in the cramped bridge of the salvage ship Lucky Strike, studying the wreckage of an alien destroyer her crew had found drifting near Jupiter. The ship had been damaged in the first battle and abandoned by the retreating collective forces. Dr. Kim, What have you learned? Maria asked the ship's scientist. Dr. James Kim pulled himself over to her using handholds. The Lucky Strike was too small for artificial gravity. Captain, their technology is incredible, but it's also predictable. They build everything the same way, use the same materials, follow the same designs. What does that mean for us? It means they're not used to adapting. Their ships are built for fighting other collective vessels, not for dealing with unexpected tactics. Maria nodded. This was exactly what Admiral Chen had hoped to learn. While the main collective fleet kept Earth under siege, dozens of human ships had been busy in the outer system, studying alien technology and mapping collective supply lines. The humans had captured data from several alien ships during the first battle. That data contained star charts, communication codes, and most importantly, the locations of collective colonies and supply bases. Captain, called Ensign Rodriguez from the communication station. We're receiving a coded transmission from Admiral Chen. Put it through. Admiral Sarah Chen's voice crackled over the speakers. All deep space units, this is Control. Execute Operation Backfire. Repeat, execute Operation Backfire, Maria smiled grimly. After 8 months of preparation, it was finally time to show the collective what human warfare really looked like. Operation Backfire was simple in concept, but devastating in execution. While the collective focused all their attention on Earth, human ships would strike at their supply lines and colonies. But they wouldn't fight like civilized species. They would fight like humans. The first target was a collective supply depot orbiting a gas giant in the Wolf 359 system. The depot was huge, designed to service dozens of ships. It was defended by only 2 light cruisers because no enemy had ever attacked collective rear areas before. Commander Lisa Park, Sarah Chen's niece, approached the depot in her modified freighter, the Angry Wasp. The ship looked like a normal cargo vessel, but appearances were deceiving. All ships, this is Park, she said into her communicator. Remember, we're not here to conquer. We're here to destroy everything they need to keep fighting. The human attack fleet consisted of 20 converted freighters and mining ships. They weren't proper warships, but they carried weapons that no civilized species would use. As the collective cruisers moved to intercept what they thought were cargo ships, the humans opened fire with weapons that horrified their enemies. Chemical explosives, radioactive waste, even containers full of corrosive acid launched from improvised catapults. What kind of barbarians are these? Asked Commander Thexval as his ship's hull began dissolving from acid attacks. They're using industrial chemicals as weapons. The collective ships tried to fight back with their proper military weapons, but the humans weren't playing by proper military rules. They rammed ships, detonated suicide bombs, and used tactics that would have been considered war crimes by any civilized species. Within 2 hours, both collective cruisers were destroyed and the supply depot was a burning wreck. The humans had also destroyed something more important: 6 months' worth of fuel and ammunition intended for the Earth invasion fleet. But the supply depot was just the beginning. On the agricultural world of Kepler Porexkortube, collective colonists were harvesting crops when human ships appeared in their sky. The colonists weren't soldiers. They were farmers and scientists who had never seen war. Major Sarah Kim, Admiral Chen's daughter, led the assault from her converted asteroid miner. All units, remember the mission, she broadcast. We're not here to hurt civilians. We're here to destroy their ability to grow food. The humans landed and immediately began a campaign of agricultural destruction that shocked the galaxy. They poisoned water supplies, salted farmland, and destroyed irrigation systems. They released engineered bacteria that ate crops and couldn't be stopped. Why are they doing this? Asked Dr. Vexlin, the colony's chief scientist, as he watched decades of agricultural development burn. We're not soldiers. This is just a farming world. But the humans understood something the collective didn't. Modern wars weren't won by armies. They were won by destroying the enemy's ability to feed, fuel, and supply their forces. Similar attacks hit 17 collective worlds in the space of a week. Humans struck fuel refineries, communication relays, and manufacturing centers. They didn't try to hold territory, they just destroyed everything useful and left. Back at Earth, Admiral Vexithai received reports of the attacks with growing horror. Sir, his communications officer reported, we've lost contact with Supply Depot 47, the agricultural stations at Kepler 442b, and the fuel refineries at Proxima Centauri. Lost contact? What do you mean? Sir, they appear to have been completely destroyed. No survivors, no functional equipment left. Vextai stared at the reports. How is this possible? Those were rear area facilities with minimal defenses. What force could destroy them so completely? According to sensor data from nearby systems, sir, the attacks were carried out by human vessels. Modified cargo ships and mining equipment. Mining equipment? Vextai's voice rose. They're attacking our colonies with mining equipment? But the reports kept coming. Human ships had somehow appeared all across collective space, striking targets that should have been impossible to reach. They moved through space using routes that didn't exist on any star chart, appeared from directions that made no sense, and fought with weapons that shouldn't work. Sir, said his tactical officer quietly, there's something else. The humans aren't taking prisoners or trying to hold territory. They're just destroying everything. Vextai began to understand the true horror of what was happening. The humans weren't trying to conquer the collective. They were trying to destroy it completely. On Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen studied reports from the outer systems with grim satisfaction. Operation Backfire was working better than she had hoped. The collective was learning what total war meant. Admiral, Lieutenant Kim Park reported, we're receiving surrender requests from several collective colonies. They want to negotiate local ceasefires. Denied, Sarah said without hesitation. No negotiations, no prisoners, no mercy. They started this war. We're going to finish it. Ma'am, some of our captains are asking about civilian casualties. The agricultural attacks killed a lot of non-combatants. Sarah turned to face her aide. Lieutenant, how many civilians died when they blockaded Earth? How many children starved while they tried to force us to surrender? Her voice was ice cold. They wanted total war. Now they have it. The strategic situation was changing rapidly. The collective fleet around Earth was running low on supplies. Their reinforcements were being destroyed before they could arrive. And human attacks on their rear areas were spreading panic throughout their empire. But Admiral Vextai still had 200 ships around Earth, and he was getting desperate. Prepare for surface bombardment, he ordered. Full power. Turn their continents to glass. Sir, his tactical officer protested, that will kill billions of civilians. They're all combatants, Vextai snarled. They've turned their entire planet into a military base. Destroy it all. But as the collective fleet prepared for genocide, they received a transmission that changed everything. It came from the collective high command, broadcast on all frequencies. To all collective forces, the message began. Effective immediately, all military operations against the human species are suspended. A delegation from the High Council is en route to negotiate an immediate ceasefire. Vextai stared at the message in disbelief. Ceasefire? We're winning. But his communications officer had more bad news. Sir, we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Human attacks have spread to over 50 systems. They've destroyed the Titan shipyards, the Vega supply complex, and, sir, they've somehow reached the core worlds. For the first time, Vextai felt real fear. The core worlds were the heart of the collective empire, thousands of light years from Earth. If humans had reached them, get me Admiral Chen, he ordered. Sarah's face appeared on his screen. She looked older than she had 8 months ago, but her eyes burned with determination. Admiral Chen, Vextai said formally, I have received orders to negotiate a ceasefire. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. A ceasefire? You came to my world to make us slaves. You've spent 8 months trying to starve us into submission, and now you want a ceasefire? The collective High Council is prepared to offer terms. No terms, Sarah interrupted. No negotiations. No ceasefire. She leaned forward. Admiral, let me make something very clear. This war doesn't end until your empire is ash and your species learns to leave other people alone. The transmission ended, leaving Vextai staring at a blank screen. For the first time in his career, he was facing an enemy that didn't want territory or tribute or even victory. They wanted complete and total destruction of everything he served, and they were winning. 2 years after the first alien ship appeared near Jupiter, the galaxy had changed forever. The Zephyrian collective, which had ruled hundreds of worlds for thousands of years, was collapsing. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in her command center, now built inside a hollowed-out asteroid in the outer solar system. Earth itself had become too dangerous for military headquarters. The planet was still under siege, but it had also become the most heavily fortified world in known space. Status report, she ordered. Captain Rodriguez, who had somehow survived 2 years of the most brutal war in galactic history, consulted his datapad. Admiral, our forces have struck 412 collective targets in the past month. We've destroyed their shipyards at Alpha Centauri, their communication hub at Vega, and their primary fuel depot at Wolf 359. Sarah nodded. The war had spread far beyond Earth. Human ships now operated in every corner of collective space, striking wherever they found weakness. But these weren't the same humans who had faced the first alien fleet. War had changed them. What about our losses? She asked. 47 ships and 12,000 personnel, Rodriguez replied. But Admiral, we're building replacements faster than we're losing them. That was the terrifying truth. Humanity had become a war machine. Every human now lived for the fight. Children learned mathematics by calculating missile trajectories. Teenagers studied engineering by building bombs. Adults worked 20-hour days in weapons factories. And it was working. The collective was bleeding to death. On the collective capital world of Zephyr Prime, High Counselor Thexmore sat in an emergency session of the ruling council. Around the circular chamber, representatives of dozens of species argued and shouted. The mighty empire was falling apart. The humans have destroyed our entire fourth fleet, shouted Ambassador Kextai from the insectoid hive worlds. They used some kind of weapon that turned our ship's own reactors into bombs. The agricultural worlds are reporting total crop failure, added Counselor Vexahan from the Agricultural Guild. The humans have poisoned everything. It will take decades to restore food production. High Counselor Thexmore raised his hand for silence. How many worlds have we lost contact with this week? 17, came the answer from the military advisor. And sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 3 more systems. They want to negotiate separate peace treaties with the humans. Thexmore closed his eyes. In 2 years, the humans had done what no enemy had managed in 1,000 years of collective expansion. They had proven that the Empire could be beaten, but it was worse than that. The humans weren't conquering collective worlds. They were destroying them. Planets that had taken centuries to develop were being turned into radioactive wastelands. Entire star systems were being abandoned as the humans made them uninhabitable. Sir, the military advisor continued, we need to discuss the unthinkable. The humans have broken through our outer defenses. They're only 3 jumps away from Zephyr Prime itself. The chamber fell silent. The capital world, heart of the Empire, was about to come under attack by humans using weapons that shouldn't exist. In deep space, Admiral Chen's daughter, Captain Sarah Kim, led a strike force toward the collective capital. Her ship, the Retribution, was built from salvaged collective technology and human ingenuity. It was ugly, crude, and more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever seen. All ships, this is Kim, she broadcast to her fleet. We're about to make history. The Collective High Council is meeting in emergency session. They think their homeworld is safe behind their massive defense fleet. She smiled grimly. Let's show them how wrong they are. The human fleet consisted of 50 ships, none of them larger than a collective cruiser. But each one carried weapons that violated every civilized rule of warfare. Nuclear mines, viral computer programs, self-replicating robots designed to eat metal, and weapons that even the humans themselves didn't fully understand. Captain, reported her tactical officer, we're detecting the collective home fleet. 300 ships in defensive formation around Zephyr Prime. Good, Sarah Kim replied. That means they're all in one place. The Battle of Zephyr Prime lasted only 6 hours, but it ended an empire that had lasted for millennia. The humans didn't try to fight the collective fleet ship to ship. Instead, they used tactics that no civilized species would consider. They released clouds of nanobots that ate through ship hulls. They fired computer viruses that turned collective ships against each other. They even used gravitational weapons that created artificial black holes. When the battle was over, the collective fleet was gone and Zephyr Prime itself was burning. Back on Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen received a priority transmission from her daughter. Mom, Sarah Kim's voice crackled over the interstellar communicator. Zephyr Prime has fallen. The Collective High Council is requesting immediate surrender talks. Sarah looked around her command center. 2 years ago, it had been staffed by professional soldiers. Now it was run by teenagers who had never known peace. Children who calculated death tolls like arithmetic problems. Young adults who thought of planets as targets to be destroyed. The war had turned humanity into something new. Something terrible. something that could never go back to what it had been before. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park asked quietly, "what are your orders?" Sarah thought about the question for a long moment. The smart thing would be to accept the collective's surrender, negotiate a peace treaty, and try to rebuild normal civilization. But Sarah remembered the first alien transmission, demanding that Earth surrender 60% of its resources. She remembered the blockade that had killed millions. She remembered watching her planet burn as the aliens tried to force humanity into slavery. "Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies. I want every ship in the galaxy to hear this." The communication officer nodded. "You're broadcasting, Admiral." Sarah Chen looked directly into the camera. She knew that her words would be heard across hundreds of star systems, by billions of beings who had never heard of Earth until 2 years ago. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force," she began, her voice calm and cold. 2 years ago, the Zephyrian Collective came to our world with an ultimatum. They demanded that we surrender our freedom and serve their empire. They told us this was how things worked in the galaxy. She paused, letting her words sink in. They were wrong. We showed them how things work in our part of space. We showed them what happens when you threaten humanity. And now their empire is burning. Around the galaxy, the transmission was being received by collective commanders, alien civilians, and neutral species who had watched the war with growing horror. "The Collective High Council has requested surrender talks," Sarah continued. "They want to negotiate terms. They want to discuss borders and treaties and all the civilized things that civilized species do when wars end." Her expression hardened. "But this war isn't ending. Not today, not tomorrow. Not until every world that served the Collective understands the price of threatening free people. We're not interested in your surrender. We're not interested in your treaties. We're not interested in your empire." She leaned forward, her eyes burning with 2 years of war and hate. "We're interested in justice, and justice means that you'll pay for starting this war. Every ship you built, every world you conquered, every species you enslaved, all of it will burn. We're going to tear your empire apart piece by piece, system by system, planet by planet." The transmission was being received in the ruins of the collective capital, where High Counselor Thexmore watched in growing horror. "You wanted to rule the galaxy," Sarah continued. "Instead, you've taught the galaxy that some species can't be conquered, can't be intimidated, can't be enslaved. You've created something new in this universe, a species with nothing left to lose and unlimited capacity for war." She stood up, and behind her, the command center showed the controlled chaos of a civilization entirely dedicated to destruction. "This is the final transmission from Earth before we finish what you started. To every species listening, remember this day. Remember what happens when you threaten humanity. Remember the price of starting a war with people who have nothing left to lose." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, silence fell as billions of beings absorbed what they had just heard. On Zephyr Prime, High Counselor Thexmore turned to his military advisor. "How many ships do we have left?" "Perhaps 50, scattered across the Empire." "But sir, they're not really military vessels anymore. Most of our crews have deserted." Thexmore nodded slowly. The collective was finished. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that humanity was just getting started. In the Asteroid Command Center, Admiral Sarah Chen turned to her staff. "Signal all fleets. Operation Final Solution is now in effect. Burn it all." Lieutenant Park, now scarred and hardened by 2 years of total war, nodded grimly. "Yes, ma'am." "How many systems should we target first?" Sarah looked out at the stars, each one representing worlds that had served the empire that tried to enslave Earth. "All of them," she said quietly. "Every single one. The war for Earth's freedom was over. The war for the galaxy's future was just beginning. And humanity had become something that would haunt the dreams of every species among the stars for generations to come."